of us in this room. Technology-driven financial fraud. There are a number of scams happening every single day. The conversation on that is not really happening in terms of how it can be addressed. I am Kunal Walia. I'm a partner with Dalberg, and I will be talking a little bit about this this topic today. I'll set the context a little bit. Hi, Shamina. I'll set the context a little bit and why we feel like talking about this issue is so important. We all know about India's financial inclusion journey. It's somewhat of a case study that people talk about in the financial inclusion ecosystem. We have 900 million odd subscribers. We have more than half of our population uses UPI. Trillions of rupees of transactions made every day. DPI, India's DPI case study is spoken about globally. However, what this has done over the last few years is also it's created this large attack surface for fraud as well, for fraudsters, right? And this is where it really becomes scary, right? India, I mean, if you just look at cybersecurity and fraud together globally, it's the third largest economy in the world. We're talking about 10 to 11 trillion dollars annually. In India, we're talking about 30,000 crores of frauds, financial frauds annually. Not proud to say this, but online financial frauds is the fastest growing sector in India's digital economy right now. And if you just translate that 30,000 crore number into what this means on a per minute basis, we're talking about 6 lakhs of frauds happening per minute. We're going to take a group photo as soon as I finish the introduction, and then we'll jump into the panel. Right. So, as I was saying, so it's a fairly large problem, and as we talk about this problem at the macro level, senior citizens are sort of losing their savings. We have households that are suffering because their livelihoods are getting destroyed, so on and so forth. But what are the kind of solutions that are out there? There are different types of solutions. Technology is being used to fight frauds. There's a lot of policy works that are happening around in India around regulating fraud. There's also the really important role of behavior science in these types of frauds, right? And we'll talk a little bit about how all of these interventions, how these solutions come together to address this challenge, which has really been exponentially increasing because of the role of Gen AI. Because of Gen AI, now it's fairly easy to create deep fakes that look really real. It's very easy to just use 1 or 2 minutes of voice recording of someone and then replicate that voice for a scam. So the level of scale, the level of customization has become really, really easy, right? So in particular, we'll be talking about how customer fraud is being driven in the age of AI, and what kind of interventions do we need to fight this fraud. And I couldn't have asked for a better panel to discuss this, and I'll very quickly give high-level introductions to the panelists because we now want to jump into the group photo and then the discussions. But I'm pleased to be joined by Samina Singh. She's the founder, president of MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth. Thank you for joining us, Shamina. I'm also joined by Pawan Bakshi, who really has been at the forefront of financial inclusion, the India's telecom revolution for years now. He is the lead of inclusive financial systems at the Gates Foundation in India. Thanks for joining, Pawan. And Shweta Singh, who leads strategy and regulatory policy work at Bharti Airtel. Airtel is really at the front of financial frauds and how financial frauds happen and the customer interface there. And can't wait to hear more from you, Shweta. And finally, Neeraj Bhatnagar, who's the founder of Atlas of Behavior Change in Development, which is a tech platform for behavior change. And Neeraj will talk about the role of behavior science in not just that fraudsters are being able to leverage, but how we can use that for interventions as well. Welcome, Neeraj. Okay, we'll very quickly now take a group photo, and then we'll jump into questions. Okay, thank you everyone. That was a great discussion. That's how it usually happens. So let's just, I'm seeing the timer here, which started much before we started, so we'll try to stick to this. Let me start with the discussion straight away. And maybe just helping everybody understand the context a little bit, understand the history a little bit. Shamina, if you allow me to start with you, can you talk a little bit about how you've seen the role of AI in financial inclusion? You know, I want to start a little bit on the on a positive note, right? How have you seen AI help with financial inclusion? What are some examples that you can talk about there in terms of financial inclusion, and really who is benefiting the most from this technology?
So thanks. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be on the panel with so many distinguished experts. Just very quickly, the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth has been around for about 13 years. And we operate at the intersection of impact. MasterCard, as a technology company in the payment space, made a commitment about 11 years ago to bring 1 billion people into the formal economy. We achieved that commitment in 2025, and in large part because the work of inclusion has to do with making sure that consumers are at the center of the equation. So I think the good news story around financial inclusion in AI is that many of us are thinking about inclusion as the default, defense by design. And so I think as we see with financial inclusion, you know, when we started this work, the rate of accounts by adults, I think, was around maybe 40%. And thanks to leadership in India specifically, I think we have seen now we're up to about 80% of adults around the world have an account. I think the role of AI and the role of technology is that we've moved from an analog economy, which is where we originally started with access and inclusion, to a data-driven economy, and now the AI economy is creating hockey stick growth. So putting consumers at the center of that equation, creating products that are inclusive by design but are defensive by design, I think is going to be the key to inclusive economic growth.
And Shamina, can you also talk a little bit about how, as you know, AI is being used for financial inclusion quite a lot, what are some of the principles around responsible AI that sort of come to mind, right? And because consumer protection is a major issue now, but how has MasterCard thought about these principles?
Yeah, so I mean, look, we did a partnership with Consumers International where they studied the regulation in eight countries. And the thing that I don't think anybody will be surprised by is that there are really good regulations that protect consumers on paper, but they're not actually being enforced in real life. And that's part of the problem, is that once a consumer engages with the financial system, if they're scammed in the first 1, 2, 300 engagements, it's very difficult to build trust in the system. And so part of the way that we believe in it and looking at it at MasterCard is, you know, you talk a lot about know your customer. We think about know your agent. And so we're trying to bring the same principles that we've brought to consumer protection with financial inclusion into the agentic space as well. And so I think this notion of privacy, transparency, and protection are the three pillars that we approach the work with at MasterCard. And I think, again, those are going to be the things that sustain us through this big, the evolution and the revolution that is AI.
Thanks so much. And we'll definitely come back to those three principles you spoke about. But Shweta, just from Airtel's point of view, how have you seen the fraud landscape in India changing, especially as you're seeing AI being more forefront, more consumer facing, with Gen AI now becoming a technology that everybody is familiar with, right? Can you talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, true. So just continuing from where Shamina had left out, there's a definite possibility or potential for positive inclusion through AI, through using the new technologies that we have at our disposal currently. But you can't deny that the scale of harm that currently exists is also because of the same technologies at play. I think when you were setting the tone of this session, you had said, you would actually answer the same question that you're asking me right now, that with AI in place, what has changed? I think it's not just the sophistication of scams which has changed, but it's the scale, truly. So as per the latest report, or as per the last report that I had read, close to $1.3 trillion were lost to scams globally, out of which 48 billion, that's what you said, about 30,000 crores, were lost in India alone. That kind of scale is not possible if the scams were happening manually. That scale is possible only because there is technology or there's AI at play here. In the same report, that's the GASA report that had come out, that's a global anti-scam alliance, they said that in the last 1 year, close to 75% of Indians had encountered spam or fraud in some form. And a single individual had around 119 scam encounters. If you look at multiple forums that he engages in, whether it's Instagram, any social networking site, call, SMS, Amazon, e-commerce. So around 119 scams. Again, that kind of scale is not possible manually. And the reason why a lot of people, and a lot of educated people also are falling prey to these scams, is because the sophistication is also increased. So just take, for instance, earlier, if a scam had to happen, a person had to first probably get some contextual knowledge about you. They had to learn probably your language. They had to learn your financial background. They had to understand some kind of persuasion tactics. Now, all of that can be done very quickly. They can be done with an excellent level of sophistication, and that can be done at scale. So just to take your words, I think in the last 1 year, one sector that has grown leaps and bounds is the scam industry in general. So probably that what was once just a scam, a simple crime of sorts, it's just become more magnified. It's become an industry scale operation with the kind of numbers that would put any small country to shame also.
And Neerath, wanted to bring you in over here because you are working at the intersection of technology and behavior change, right? And I just wanted to understand how fraudsters have been able to, at this level of scale, manipulate certain behaviors of certain segments of the community. Can you talk a little bit about the vulnerabilities that they've been really able to tap at this level of scale using technology?
Yeah. I think super important question. And when we think of fraudsters, before some of the more recent news reports that came in, that everyone's kind of been talking about, these industrial complexes that exist in Myanmar, Cambodia, I think the mental model that we have of fraudsters is this like small shop, individuals who are doing certain things, but they are a very, very important part of this whole equation. They think they're given targets, there's a lot of coercion around committing fraud, innovating to find new types of mechanisms. AI, like Shweta was saying, AI has really reduced the marginal cost of committing fraud, right? So the cost of actually staying with somebody over multiple weeks and months and even years in certain cases, that marginal cost has fallen to near zero because of information, because of AI. The marginal cost of deception has fallen to zero. So there's a lot of innovation that's happening on that side, on the fraudsters. And it's happening where they are traversing different mediums. They'll start on, let's say, WhatsApp, they'll go to a phone call, they'll go to an email. So they're not contained in these silos where regulation sits, or even private sector actors. They are contained in certain silos, and their levers are within that silo. But if the fraud attempts are traversing silos and temporally they're spread over multiple weeks and multiple months, you need a whole different paradigm of approaching it. There's so much you can do from a technology standpoint, but there's a lot of behavioral stuff that also needs to be done to build immunity against this. And in my mind, I see the end equilibrium to be a yin-yang kind of an equilibrium, where both of these things need to work together for kind of adequate safety.
And we'll talk about that, the balance that we need to find between the two types of interventions. But Pawan, just bring you into the conversation. At the Gates Foundation, there's obviously, financial inclusion is not something that we've achieved yet. I mean, we've opened bank accounts, but usage still needs to be increased. So there's a lot of push that needs to be done. But at the same time, we're hearing that, technology-driven financial fraud is a major, major problem. So as a philanthropy, how do you balance this now? Have your priorities changed in the last few years? Has the thinking changed in the last few years?
So yeah, well, thanks everyone. The issue is that for AI to work well, you need data. And India has done exceptionally well by structuring the data it's gone and created in terms of the ID system, in terms of the payment system, in terms of the data exchanges, the account aggregator, DigiLocker, the works. So there is data, right? But that whole piece, as you rightly went and said, that 90% of adults in the country have a bank account today, but not as many of them use it actively. About half of them you use it regularly. And in the process of increasing usage, while there is about relevance and suitability of products and and the type of products to use and handsets to get to and the network availability, and there are whole loads of challenges and social norms there. There's also an added thing about protection, right? Is there trust in the ecosystem? I think there is a deep discussion on at all levels. Is, do we make our DFS risk-free, or do we help in creating an ecosystem which is trustworthy? So it's not a activity-based thing, but a larger ecosystem-based thing. And as Neeraj said, it's multiplicity of stuff, right? So we are seeing this because the same tools that provide access can also be used exploitatively, right? So as an example, if you take mobile money as an example, or digital is very important to reach the last mile, which are really remote, where the banks will not go and serve them regularly. But in the same way, that allows a fraudster to reach out to those very folks to do that, to go and scan them out. And even small value scams happening at large scale are actually large value scams. So this whole thing is changing, and for us, one of the things that we've now introduced in our strategy is to work on customer protection. That includes data, it includes privacy, it includes consent, it also includes hardcore work on customer protection, and we believe it's at two levels. One is obviously at the level of technology and regulation and policy. The other is around what happens on the consumer side. And on the consumer side, change in behavior is one element of that, but it's not enough, because you can't train a lot of people across geographies and segments in a similar way. So it's complex. But essentially, it's an important aspect to look at. So we've changed our strategy to include the customer protection stuff in this.
Yeah, and as we start now moving the conversation towards solutions, I mean, having been in this industry for a long time, what can we learn from previous customer protection interventions? What is relevant now in this world of AI?
I think the first one is the lesson that we've learned is that gone are the days when the regulation led technology. It's now about technology, I think, leading regulation, and that's changed a whole load of stuff. And along with that comes, how do we react to things? Because if it's happening on tech, I remember, in the old days, when I was there at Airtel as an example, we had a process of saying the team would look at revenue assurance in a way by saying, are there loopholes in the product or the process which will allow leakage? That was more to do on the institutional side. We could do same things and more on the consumer side to test a product to say, can this be gamed? Are there ways of addressing this? I think, so that's one lesson. The other is around, we've not had a lot of experience in handling multi-regulator, multiple geography, multiple start points from a telecom or on the internet, ways of arriving at the same level of customer. So those things have gone and changed, which we have zero experience on. I think so we need to learn that up very, very quickly and try and understanding what that would mean for the end consumer, because she's the one who's actually going to be hurt, at the end of the day. Everybody else can pass on the blame and move on, right? And I think the other thing which we need to change is that we've in the past done training consumers to say, here's what you should be doing, and that meant that we've passed on the liability to the consumer that we told you if you screw up, right? It's your problem. We need to change that. And we need to be equally responsible as the consumer is to be able to say that, look, we didn't know this was going to happen. It has happened. We are with you in solving this and taking this down completely. So I think there are enough and more lessons like that. On the regulation piece, we look at M-Pesa in Kenya and the loans there. It just skyrocketed. Right? For small value loans, people are blacklisted. There are things which emerge we can't even try and imagine, unfortunately. So yeah, I'll probably stop there.
No, thanks, Pawan. And one thing you mentioned was that you have to use technology. Behavior change is good, it's not enough. So it has to go hand in hand. And that's where, Shweta, I wanted to bring you in, right? Because Airtel, the telecom industry, generally, we see a lot of innovation there. I appreciate those innovations as a customer because I get those messages that don't click on this link I would have clicked on. Can you just talk us through what type of innovations Airtel has launched or maybe other telecom operators have launched, and also what's worked, what's not worked?
Thank you, Kunal. Actually, I'll start from where Pawan sir had just left off. That while, of course, a lot of organizations, including his, are doing an excellent work at consumer awareness, and especially for the vulnerable segments of users, teaching them how to not get defrauded. But I think it is upon us as corporates as well to do our bit, to be empathetic towards the users, and to prevent the harm before it has happened. So as a telecom operator, we are very cognizant of our responsibility that we are the first line of defense. We are the first entity that a customer, both a fraudster and a consumer, interacts with when a fraud has to happen or before the fraud happens. And for the last 2 years, I'm very happy to say that Airtel has taken this head on, and trust and safety has been at the forefront of our corporate responsibility and business priorities. We've launched multiple product innovations and interventions that have actually helped the consumers at large. I'll just give you examples of a few of them, and I'm sure a lot of people who are sitting in the room today must have experienced them as well. So in September of 2024, we launched a real-time spam detection voice and SMS calling feature. That means when you are on call, and if we believe that the caller is a fraudulent caller or a spammer, you will get an Airtel warning spam real-time on the call. And you can then take a call whether you want to pick it up or not. But we are warning the customers well in advance. Similarly, we did so on the SMS side as well. As of January of 2026, we have flagged close to 71 billion calls and around 3 billion SMSs. This was also acknowledged by MHA last year. That's the Ministry of Home Affairs, I4C. That's the nodal agency for scams, frauds, and any kind of fraudulent activity. That for Airtel users, the amount of financial frauds, the quantum of financial frauds has reduced by 70%. So we know for a fact that what we are doing is helping the customers in the end. Then in May of last year, we launched fraud detection link solution. That means we realized that a lot of fraud today were coming through malicious URLs. Now, it's possible that the malicious URL is coming to you via a SMS, but it's equally possible that it's coming to you via a WhatsApp, a Telegram, Instagram, or through any other medium. But at the end of the day, that URL is going to open on an Airtel network. So whether it's mobile broadband network or a fixed line broadband network, it is going to open on an Airtel network. So we realize that it's our responsibility to make sure that if the link is fraudulent, and we have multiple factors to look at and before determining whether a link is fraudulent or not, to not let it open in the first place. And that also we realized was protecting the Airtel users from inadvertently clicking on something that may lead to a fraud. Then just about 10-15 days back, we've launched a third solution in our arsenal, that's OTP on fraud. Again, as per a report, a GSM latest report that we had come across, we realized that a lot of frauds were happening when a person was under stress or duress. That means you're on a call, and the scamster is impersonating to be someone that you trust, and you do pass on the banking OTP to him while on the call. So we realized, again, looking at the network signals, if a person is on the call and a financial OTP comes as an SMS, we give them a timely intervention and ask them that, do you know this customer and do you want to receive this OTP? And till the time a person does not say yes, the OTP is not delivered on the phone. That just creates a very timely pause for a person to know that this might be a fraudulent number. Now, in doing all of these customer intervention, what's interesting is that we did not look at the personal attribute of the scammer. So when we are doing these analysis, we are not looking at this, or we're not answering the question that the person who's doing or calling, is he a scammer? We are answering the question that, is he exhibiting the traits of a scammer or not? And for doing that, I don't need to know whether it's Kunal or whether it's Pawan. I just need to know that the number is exhibiting the traits or not. So for instance, there are 250 odd parameters that are at play here. For instance, whether a SIM swap has happened on this number in the last 30 days or not, whether there has been a device swap or not, is the location verification happening, how many unique calls is that number making in a day. So for instance, if you're calling 300 people in a day, but you're not receiving any calls back, and all of these 300 numbers are unique numbers, it's more likely that you are a spammer. And there is a possibility that in all of this mesh, there are some genuine people. So for instance, your Blue Dart courier person also gets caught. So just a few months after our first solution, we launched a business name display solution as well. That means even if it is a promotional calling, you would still get the name of the company who's calling you. So again, you can take a call that if it's an insurance company who's calling you, you can decide whether you want to take that call or not. But at the same time, you can decide not to take that call. So that's been a range of customer interventions that we have done just out of a corporate responsibility without patronizing the customer. Now, as per our learnings, as you're saying, we realized that although all of these interventions have massively helped the customer, and we've got enough validation from both the regulator and the customer, one thing that we have realized is that scam or frauds are not isolated to one platform. And that's what Neerath was also saying, that it's not just restricted to phone calls, it's not restricted to SMS anymore. It's a whole of ecosystem that needs to act. So there is a possibility that a fraud may start through a phone call, but it may end at WhatsApp, or it may end through a banking transaction. So till the time the entire ecosystem players, they don't come together, the whole problem of fraud, it can't be solved in silos.
This is fascinating. One additional question from Pawan. Does this reduce churn? Is this a strong business case?
It may reduce. Oh, you're saying does it reduce churn? Oh yeah, I'm sure it does. I thought you're saying that the people who are calling might also be Airtel users.
What I was trying to ask is, now that you've been seen as an organization which is more supportive and customer protective, are you seeing larger number of customers come in and stay on for longer?
Yeah, so it's difficult to attribute it singularly to these features, but what we have seen is that also I think all of us who are sitting here know that none of these features were given at any cost. They were free of cost for all Airtel users, so there's no monetary benefit that I'm getting out of launching these solutions. But there is a greater attribution of trust and safety that is given on Airtel network. So there is a possibility that when a person is on Airtel network, he may feel much safer. And oh yeah, absolutely, he, she.
Thank you so much. Shamina, really keen to hear from your experience, especially in terms of like how MasterCard is navigating these challenges, what type of solutions, what type of awareness campaigns, what are the different categories of solutions that MasterCard is pushing through? Where have you seen things work and where are some limitations that you feel more collaboration is needed around?
Well, I think that the main issue the thread that I'm hearing is, and I can't remember who brought it up, but the onus is on the consumer, and that's not fair. And so I think part of the way that we've approached it is very similar to the products we use. So if you have a MasterCard or a debit card or a payment card, if you are defrauded, you get your money back. So the redress system is built into the product. And I think that's a very important thing to think about, is as we're building products and solutions, the onus has to be on the company and to make sure that if you are defrauded, you have a system in place to get your money back, to have redress. And that's what I was talking about earlier, is it's written in all of the regulations, but the systems, as you just said, everybody's operating on different platforms. So a consumer has to think about, okay, is it my telephone? Is it my banking? Is it my internet? Like what? So, and they're getting defrauded in every single place. How is that building trust in a system? And I think it's less, frankly, about, is it the CSR thing or it's your business case. Like that is the way that we approach it, is the business case for MasterCard depends on the satisfaction of the customer. I mean, that's business. And so I think, in 2024 alone, MasterCard stopped 160 billion transactions that were fraudulent. And that was in 2024 when AI was just starting. In 2026, that number is going to quadruple. So these are not things that can be put on the customer to figure out. So yes, I believe in education, and I believe, and we're, even as employees, we're taught, don't fish, don't all the things. But at the same time, I think as people who are sitting in places of privilege and power, we have to make sure that it's on us to figure this out. And the last thing I'll say about this is the reason why I think payment systems are so successful is that nobody wakes up every morning and says, how am I going to pay for something? They wake up and they say, I want to purchase something. And so our job is to make sure that we're in the background, making sure that those purchases are easy to make, making sure that calls and texts and SMS are easy to make. If we put the focus on the process behind it, we've lost the battle. And frankly, that's where the competitive models of AI should be playing, is if you're not operating in that space where you are invisible and that the process just works, then that's the place we need AI to be, and that's the place I think we all want to be.
Thanks so much. Neeraj, just bringing you in over here, from a customer resilience perspective, what more do you think can be done? What does the landscape even look like? You've done a lot of research around, what type of awareness interventions, general behavior interventions are out there, what's working, what's not working. Can you just give us a lay of the land? And also I'm very keen to sort of understand how can experts like you probably collaborate more with technology companies, right? What's the give and take over there? How does that work? If you have any thoughts.
Sure. Let's start with the definition of resilience. In my mind, when it comes to fraud, resilience is the difference between exposure and vulnerability. If two people, they have the same exposure to fraud, but they are differently vulnerable, that is the resilience. That's one way of instrumentalizing the resilience. If you look at data points across different countries, if you look at Singapore and UK, for instance, there's a couple of really interesting data points where, because they put very strong regulation and technology in place, the overall macro numbers in fraud are coming down for sure. But what's increasing is what's called APP, authorized payment push, right? So in both of these countries, the authorized payment push kind of fraud is increasing at a fairly fast clip. And if you look at it, it's because people are willingly engaging in transactions which may not be purchase transactions, they just might be transfer transactions. And I think there's a lot of behavioral piece, and it's not just education, I think it's about the entire life cycle of where behavior can come in and play a role, nudges, pre-bunking. Now, when you look at, if you look at what I think needs to be done and where expertise can come in, there's two parts to this, very similar to what, let's say, India Stack did 15 years ago. So one is, do we know from a behavior science perspective what works at micro scale, right? And then the second question is, do we know how to scale that thing at micro scale to macro country scale or global scale, right? So the good news is that at micro scale, there's a lot of very rich evidence on the interventions that work to protect people against fraud, right? So there's a bunch of research, and there are very, very large effect sizes of certain kinds of interventions. So, pre-bunking, inoculation, bridging the intention to action gap, certain frequencies, all trainings lose efficacy within 6 months, right? So, so there is a package of interventions that are very cheap to deploy, and those things work. Now the question is, how do you scale that? How do you scale that in an ecosystem where all of this is happening across different kinds of entities, banks, fintechs, communication providers, of all different kinds, right? So Airtel probably and MasterCard at the vanguard of such capabilities, right? There are so many smaller entities who don't have that sophistication in-house. So I think we need a similar way of thinking about it. How can we create like a behavioral public good, right? Almost like a API or a stack, which then can scale such insight into all parts of the ecosystem and is constantly learning, because this is not almost like a whack-a-mole exercise where on the one hand fraudsters are going to innovate, they will AI itself as a vector is becoming sharper, so you'll have constant kind of proliferation of new methods, so solving for those, experimenting, and that data then has to be owned by the ecosystem, right? There's a lot of value in not privatizing that data and actually making that a public good so that interventions can scale. So in short, I think one, we need to have a very clear role of behavior versus technology. I think the vocabulary really matters. I've seen it getting simplified very, very often. Number two, I think we need to think about the whole life cycle of transactions, not just, let's say, paying for something. And number three, I think there's a huge amount of value in creating these behavioral public goods on technology rails, of course, which make it very easy for a willing organization to do it, right? If you look at the cost of hiring a behavioral team, or it's quite high. And for smaller firms, if it eats into the bottom line, they'll probably not do it. The default will to not do it, and in different jurisdictions the liability sits very differently, right? So so there's no financial incentive to also do it, but if you make it easy by offering such a plug and play kind of a stack solution or API solution, then more will do it, and you learn smarter, you learn collectively. So that's at least a thesis that we are working on at EBCD.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Neerath. And it's really fascinating to see the range of solutions that people have spoken about and the scale of the solutions also. And still, what are some of the gaps that need to be plugged in? We have about 8 minutes left. I have a few more questions, but I just wanted to open it up to the audience. If anybody has any questions for the panelists, please feel free to raise your hand. There's a mic roaming around over here. Maybe we'll take 2 questions. If you could just briefly introduce yourself and ask the question, and if it's directed to any one person.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kunal. I am Indivar, an entrepreneur, new one. I think whenever customer initiatives are launched, the adoption curve of the customer is slower than the adoption curve of the fraudster. And 2 years back, and this question is for Shweta. Okay, I think Airtel, despite the RMS and ARPU pressures, has taken this courageous act of putting all the measures in place. Now, what is the learning? What is the perspective? What's the kind of decision making you've taken at that point of time to take this courageous decision, and hence what's the message and learning for the other corporates and institutions to take such calls to protect customers?
Can we take one more question? Over there, Mukundan.
Like we have recently seen the Indigo case, that it holds the 60% of the 60% of the aviation. If any AI would dominate the AI industry, and next day China would cyber attack India, it can take away the data of citizens of India. What would government do in this case?
I'm guessing any panelist can answer that question?
It is for all.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll start with your question, and I'll try to attempt your question as well, and then of course we can open it up to the panel as well. Thank you so much, first off. I hope you're an Airtel customer. Yes, and then you've seen these interventions at play. So it's the same question that Pavan sir had also asked a while back, that did you see any uptake in ARPU? Did you have any definite customer gain? Did you see any benefits on the business side as well? So when we introduced these interventions back in September of 2024, I don't think that was the intention. For the longest time, the number of fraud that were being reported across the whole ecosystem, across all three telecom operators, was staggering. And we really wanted to do something for the customer. And that's a completely in-house solution, that I should tell you. So we got our data engineers in place. They started tinkering around with a lot of telecom data that we have without, of course, touching the personal data of the customers. And we started experimenting with what kind of logic would a spamster deploy. How would you identify a spamster? And we started building that intelligence engine on our network itself. When we deployed the solution, the kind of reaction that we got from the customers, that was staggering. It was so overwhelming, and it was so overwhelmingly positive that despite the fact that we were not charging the customer, despite the fact that there was no monetary aspect attached to it, there was no ARPU uptick, it really was something that made the customer loyal to the brand even more. Even more so to the fact that last year we actually changed the tagline of our brand to Airtel, the safe network. That also gave us the confidence to keep working on such intervention. It was not a one-stop shop solution that, okay, fine, you've done a good job, let's now focus on other priorities. Trust and safety has been a priority for us for the last 2 years, and we want to keep working on it for the years to come. In all our industry associations, on global platforms, we've taken this issue up. We worked with all regulators, the entire breadth of it, whether it is RBI, AIRDAI, SEBI, DOT, TRAI, MHAI, 4C, basically trying to find a solution that can bring all ecosystem players together and curb fraud at the very initial stage itself. The second part that we want to work on is what I think has been discussed by a lot of other panel members as well, that once the fraud has actually happened, then what kind of recourse can you give to the customer? A very interesting fact that I had read recently was that once a fraud happens, at least 2/3 of the people don't know who to report it to. That do you go to the police, do you go to DOT, do you go to NCRP database, do you go to Chakshu, or do you tell the platform itself on which the fraud has happened, do you tell your friends? So a lot of people just don't end up reporting as well. And there's a lot of social stigma that is attached with a fraud happening to you. So that part is also something that we want to solve, but with the rest of the ecosystem. And it gives us a lot of pleasure, honestly. Every time we go to any industry meet, any person that we meet and he says that, listen, aapke wajah se na, I know ki nahi uthana hota. Or I can tell my parents who are elderly that, listen, if you're getting an Airtel warning spam, please don't pick up that call. At least that's the first line of defense I can tell you. So yeah, I think that answers. To your question, yes, about data residing on any foreign infrastructure, that's, I think the entire India AI conference, data resilience or sovereignty has been a key theme for this entire conference. And we're very, again, as an Indian telecom operator, working with a lot of critical sectors, we are very cognizant of the risk that holds. So essentially, if critical data sets are being hosted on infrastructure that is owned and operated by foreign companies, there is a risk, there is an inherent risk that is there in their operations. So yes, it's been our earnest request to the government that at least the critical data sets owned by the government should be on an Indian-owned and Indian-operated CSPs, and there should be some movement, some discussions around sovereignty as well.
Thanks, Shweta. Pawan, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, so I was just going to add on the other point which Indiva asked a question. So when calls aren't terminated on the network and they fall short, you get extra capacity on the network. So that's also a way of increasing capacity network.
If I can just reframe the second question a little bit, and then Shamina, can you maybe take a crack at answering that question, and Neerath, which is, what is the role of the government in all of this? And are we doing enough in terms of collaboration? What needs to happen there on that side of the equation? So Shamina and then Neerath, or Neerath and then Shamina.
Yeah, I definitely think there are market failures in fraud management from a behavioral perspective. So there are these behavioral pieces, these public goods for behavior change that need to be created, and the government is best placed to create those and serve those through such APIs, through such rails, because they don't neatly fit in any one organization's kind of scope of work, right? So, I definitely think, again, I keep on going back to the India stack / API / rails kind of a metaphor, because in my mind, that is the best way of getting this stuff out to a lot of points of aggregation, which then gets you massive scale, hundreds of millions of people, then being better protected and being more resilient. So yeah, I think a lot of behavioral public goods are needed for fraud.
Yeah, I think the consideration around bringing the best to India and bringing India to the world is sort of the thing that I think about. I mean, as a daughter of immigrants living in America, that's sort of my MO, is that I hope that I'm the best of India, and I hope I'm bringing the best of India back here. I think there are technologies, because I agree with Shweta, I think there are technologies that require data to stay on soil, and that's fair and fine. And I also think that the technology allows for that in a way. What I think it precludes, though, is that for those Indians who want to travel outside of India, for those who want to bring tourism to India, to the fact that the biggest growth driver for India is going to be tourism over the next couple of years. I think I believe in the sovereignty, but I also believe in the economic opportunity and the market drivers, right? And so I think that the way that we've approached it at MasterCard and also at the Center for Inclusive Growth is that you have to create competitive drivers for a race to the top. We compete on financial inclusion, and that's a good thing. We don't compete for a race to the bottom. And I think once you start building that in to the market, you start to see a different outcome. So if the battle for the Indian consumer is based on data integrity, is based on transparency, is based on consumer protection, we'll take that battle any day of the week. But you have to make it a fair playing field.
Well, this was a fascinating discussion, and if there's one takeaway from me from this discussion is that we need more of these discussions, because the scale of the problem is just too big for us to not address and talk about. And the other thing is that what I've heard is that there are so many different types of solutions already out there. We need to learn from each other. We need to share those solutions. Neerath's points on creating more public goods and creating sort of principles around which we sort of operate, like, not having the customer accountable, but, the accountability needs to lie somewhere. But lots to learn, lots more to talk about, and I'm glad that this discussion has started via the summit. Thank you so much, panelists, and pleasure.